What is up, guys? Randomonium here with another lore video. Today we're going to be talking about some of the stories from Zaun that have been recently posted, specifically Warwick, Janna, Zac, and Ekko. As of the making of this video, there is no updated information on the Universe website posted on Jinx, Mundo, Blitzcrank, Singed, Victor, or Twitch. But when that information does become available, I will be doing another lore video. So we first have to talk about Warwick. I've already posted a video on the Warwick teaser trailer and the story Engineering the Nightmare, so I won't be talking much about those in this video. I was pretty happy, however, that I accurately predicted most of Warwick's new abilities, and that most of the other things I talked about in this video have been confirmed with these new stories. I'm going to begin this video with perhaps the most controversial and most shocking hypothesis that I have. Jinx is Warwick's adopted daughter. But Randomonium, I hear you ask, you already told us in your Piltover lore video that you think Jinx and Vi are sisters. How can both of these be true? I'm glad you asked that question. If we go back to Vi's background, we can read, on his deathbed, a notoriously mad sump scraper claimed to have found Vi adrift in a bassinet large enough for two in the ruins of a collapsed chem laboratory. This indicates that Vi most likely had a sibling, but for some reason they were split up. Then looking at Warwick's lore, we can read, though many think of Warwick as no more than a beast, buried beneath the fury lies the mind of a man. A gangster who put down his blade and took up a new name to live a better life. Later in his lore it reads, Warwick struggled to recall a single memory from his past. All he could see was blood, but then he heard a little girl screaming something he couldn't understand. It sounded like a name. And further down it reads, yet even as he surrendered to the beast, glimpses of his past began to haunt him. He saw a bearded man reflected in the eyes of a beggar as he tore out his throat. The other man looked somber, somehow familiar. There were scars on his arms. Sometimes, as he fed in dark alleys on stray gangers, the flash of knives reminded him of an old blade covered in blood. Blood passing from the blade to his hands, from his hands to everything he touched. Sometimes he remembered the girl again. And still there was blood. It had always been there, he realized, his entire life, and nothing he did could wash it off. He'd left so many scars that even if he didn't remember his past, the city would. When he peered into the eyes of Zaun's criminals, the gang bosses, murderers, and thieves, he saw himself. The chamber on his back would fill his body with hate. His claws tore out of his fingers. What we can gather from all of this is that Warwick was one bad dude before he transformed. He was a thief and he was a murderer. And then something happened which turned his life completely around. One single incident which convinced him to put down his blade and become a new man. There's only one thing that I know of that can cause such a massive transformation, and that's love. And there's no love stronger than the love of a parent for a child. That seems to be echoed throughout Warwick's story. The only thing he can remember is this little girl, indicating that that girl was the most important thing in his life, the one thing that he held on to even through all the torture that he had been put through. However, based on Warwick's violent lifestyle prior to this change, I think it's extremely unlikely that this girl is the biological daughter of Warwick. Instead, I think it's much more likely that Warwick murdered the parents of this girl and then felt so guilty that he raised her as his own daughter. So how do we know that this daughter is Jinx? Well, for that we have to look at the in-game dialogue between Warwick and Jinx. When Warwick taunts Jinx, he says one of two lines. Let me forget, and you were there. Let's talk about the first line first. This line, let me forget, clearly indicates that Jinx is indeed the girl he remembers, since that little girl is the only thing that Warwick remembers. This indicates very strongly that Warwick is in fact the adoptive father of Jinx. What's even more disturbing is the second line that Warwick says to Jinx. You were there. This alludes to Jinx being present while Warwick was being transformed into the beast that he now is. This suggests that Jinx was complacent in letting her adoptive father be tortured at the hands of Singed. This is extremely disturbing, to say the least. The only way that I can make sense of this, while not making Jinx a complete monster, is to assume that Jinx believes in whatever work Singed is doing. It's even possible that she volunteered Warwick to Singed, or made Singed aware of Warwick's pedigree, and believed that it would be a great honor for Warwick to transcend his humanity and unleash his quote-unquote true form. There's still a lot of questions that need to be answered on this topic, so hopefully we get a better explanation of all of this once Jinx's story is released. Warwick also has an interaction with Vi that indicates that he was there when she was an infant. When Warwick taunts Vi, he says, "The fear in your eyes, I've seen it before." This indicates that Warwick was present at some time in Vi's past when there was fear in her eyes. This seems extremely uncharacteristic for Vi, since she seems to not be afraid of anything nowadays. This indicates that this event must have occurred when she was extremely young, and the most likely event in young Vi's life to cause such fear would be the murder of her parents. What could be more traumatic and more fearful than staring into the eyes of the person who killed your parents? So it's pretty clear to assume that Warwick is Jinx's adopted father, and that Warwick was there when Vi's parents were killed. But how does this all fit in with Jinx and Vi being sisters? Why didn't Warwick take both of them? Why did he only take Jinx and leave Vi? He had to have a reason for wanting them to be split up. To get some insight into these questions, we have to look at Camille's voice lines. When Camille taunts Vi, she says, "Ever wonder how you became an orphan?" And "It's like looking into a crude, boorish mirror." Furthermore, when Camille attacks Vi, she says, "Watch it, girl. I am your future." And also she says, "So direct, like most fools." My best guess to explain these lines is that Vi and Jinx are related to Camille, and perhaps have a better claim to Clan Pharos than Camille or her brother did. In Camille's lore, it says that she and her brother were the youngest of 7 children, but they were the only ones to survive to adulthood. If one of her siblings was thought dead, but somehow survived and produced offspring, those children or grandchildren could have a stronger claim than both Camille or her brother, or at the very least threaten Camille's control of Clan Pharos. This explains the crude, boorish mirror comment, and also gives context to the "Watch it, girl, I am your future" comment. Vi's parents most likely revealed themselves to Camille sometime in the past, expecting to be welcomed into the family with open arms. However, Camille saw them as a threat and hired Warwick to kill them and the girls. This theory also adds extra meaning to the line, "so direct, like most fools." The fools in this case being Vi's parents, who trusted Camille and expected to be treated like family, and instead were murdered for their openness and their honesty. My guess is that while Warwick did kill Vi's parents, he could not bear to kill the little girls. Knowing that they would be hunted down and killed by Camille if she ever found out, he decided to separate them, keeping Jinx with him and leaving Vi where someone would find her. This is why the person who found Vi found her in a bassinet that was large enough for two. I admit that there's a lot of speculation in the story that I've woven, but it does make for a really convincing tale. I believe that there's more right than wrong in my speculation, but we'll have to see what other clues are dropped when the rest of Zaun's lore is released. So let's move on to Janna now. Janna's bio and story are absolutely fantastic, and if you haven't read them, you definitely should. Janna's story, Deep Breath, is especially emotional and captures who Janna is perfectly. However, Janna's new lore doesn't give us many secrets to the other plots within Valoran or Runeterra as a whole. Perhaps the most interesting thing that it indicates is that some, and perhaps all, of the mystical creatures within Runeterra draw power from the belief of mortals. The more mortals believe in them, the more powerful they become. It's unclear if this also applies to entities such as Bard or Kindred, or transcended mortals such as Azir or Nasus, but it does cement a very interesting fact about Runeterra. Belief has power to it, and belief can be a catalyst for magic. Next up, we're going to be talking about Zac. Like Janna, Zac's story is very well written, but it doesn't have too many secrets in it. The biggest connection we have in Zac's story is the Chem Baron, who views Zac as his property, Sado Takeda. We learn that this Chem Baron has a notoriously violent temperament and a reputation for bloody gang wars. Sado Takeda was first introduced in Evelyn's lore, where he hired her to kill a rival baron, Artiga Holt. Curiously, Evelyn's lore also has a nod to Camille, who wasn't released at the time. Evelyn's story ends with her saying that Takeda owes her many payments and that she would be collecting them in the future. This poses an interesting conflict between Zac and Evelyn. Zac would kill Takeda if he had the opportunity to, since Takeda was responsible for Zac's earlier imprisonment and also responsible for the death of Zac's parents. Evelyn, however, most likely wants to collect in full the payments that she is owed, and wouldn't be very happy if Zac ended up killing Takeda. This would be an extremely interesting battle if Riot ever decides to do this story. My guess is that if this battle ever occurred, that Zac would be no match for Evelyn and her insane killer prowess, but it's doubtful that Evelyn could actually ever kill Zac. All she could do would be cause him a lot of pain and force him to retreat and regather his strength. The final champion we're going to talk about in this video is Ekko. There's one extremely important part of Ekko's story, and that's the origin of his Z-Drive. In Ekko's lore it reads, "One night, while Ekko scoured the rubble of a recently demolished laboratory, he made an astonishing find, a shard of a blue-green gem that glittered with magical energy. He quickly searched and discovered other fragments of the glowing jewel. The shards hummed like they were trying to sing a broken melody, the song growing louder when near other pieces. He painstakingly searched for every splinter of the broken crystal, though some were buried deep beneath tons of debris that required him to squeeze and wiggle between chunks of smelly rubbish. Every child of Zaun heard tales about Hextech crystals. They powered weapons and heroes. They could create energy on their own. Hextech crystals had the potential to change the world. Now he had a broken one. Before he could celebrate his find, the place was crawling with vigilnauts scanning the ruins, searching for something. Ekko knew it was the pieces of the crystal he held in his hand. He barely escaped detection. It is my theory that the shattered crystal that Ekko found is none other than the crystal shattered by Jace in his battle with Victor. This is the same crystal that was found in Shurima, and is most likely the twin of Ezreal's crystal. If you're not following my logic so far, then please check out my Piltover lore video where I explain all of those stories in much more detail. It really makes an amazing amount of sense to me. Ezreal's crystal is able to manipulate space, and Ekko's crystal is able to manipulate time. Together, the two crystals could be one of the most powerful forces on the planet if placed in the right hands. They're essentially the Infinity Stones of the League universe, but I'm not going to go down that Marvel parallel path yet again. Unfortunately, that's all I've got for you for this video. When Riot releases the rest of Zaun's lore, I'll be sure to do another video for you guys. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, and if you like the content on this channel and you want to see more of my videos, please subscribe. If you agree with my theories or have some theories of your own, please leave a comment below. I hope you all have a fantastic day. This is Randomonium, signing off.